Our seventh session for today, inshallah, will be delivered by Vitor Manuel Alves Pereira. He's a journalist and communication expert, creative and visionary strategist, and deep thinker. He's a co-founder of Zoom Global. He is a co-founder of Zoom Global Smart Cities Association, a G-agnostic platform with heart and soul of the future. Co-founder of Smart Cities Portugal Cluster, international speaker and contributor, chair and coordinator of numerous events around the world, and specialized content platforms such as magazines, portals, blogs, etc. Working with cities, universities, and private corporations to develop roadmaps and strategies for smart cities, smart regions, smart tourism. First awarded with the prize of Personality of the Year Smart Cities Live in 2015 in Portugal, also awarded for the first time within the frame of the Green Business Week, an initiative of the AIP Foundation. He is also a winner of the People's Choice Award, first edition in 2018, an initiative from Smart to Future, UK's Global Smart Cities event. Mr. Pereira, the virtual space is yours. You may kindly open your mic and video and share with us your valuable presentation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm honored to be part of this amazing event. Never been in Oman, but like others already referred, definitely looks like a good destination for visit after all this ends. And actually the topic of the event, like smart cities without borders, in the moment where we all have borders again, says something about what is going on. And I'm flattered to share with my good friends Jonathan and Vladimir, and well the other speakers with the good content, and will be great to share with you what are my visions about all these topics. I'm not going to speak too much about the COVID-19, though I'm going to share my presentation to see if it's possible to start it now. Okay, here it is. And I have the feeling that the COVID-19 only brought us to a momentum where everything was already a little bit blurred. So my presentation is entitled "The Smart City We Need to Build," and it's not on purpose. It's on purpose that I put a lot of cranes and a lot of buildings, because one of the biggest problems that the world was experienced and the cities were experienced before the COVID-19, and I presume after the COVID-19 will continue to experience, is the lack of affordable housing, for example. We are listening to a lot of complications regarding the protests around the world and the movements, but actually there's a feeling that things continue to be complicated for a big majority of population in our cities. So it's an evidence that smart cities are one of the most renowned buzzwords that persist through the years. We've been listening for more than, at least I'm working with this topic for more than 15 years, and we have been listening that technology and digitalization are the great assets for our cities around the globe. But the reality shows us that probably we are not there yet, and probably we will never be, because smart city, it's not a product. I translated the new concept of smart city to a philosophy instead of a product that you can include in your community. So, watching the mainstream media platforms, we have pumped up the top ranking smart cities, the biggest ones, the most famous around the world. Everyone understands these cities as a role model for what all the cities should also follow. And we see a lot of examples how these cities in a lot of areas, they are not so smart as they appear to be. I can mention, for example, Barcelona was considered one of the smartest cities in the world in 2014, but the mayor lost the election in 2014 because of the tourism, the massive tourism, the wild tourism. It was not controlled at all. So the population didn't feel that the smart city full of sensors, full of Wi-Fi, full of sharing services was enough. They thought at that there was a moment to change leadership and choose another project. So obviously, these famous cities need to be smart somehow. By one hand, the technology that they introduce to improve the efficiency and manage better the resources and overcome the challenges. But by other hand, they have a communication strategy and social engagement involving the communities and neighbors. We have a lot of examples. Some already spoken in this event. So where are then the smart cities? The ones that receive the majority of the population by 2050. This is the main sentence we've been listening all over the world in these kind of events. Everyone mentioned that the majority population will be living in urban areas, but there are the others who are losing population and can find ways to survive or thrive. Will be this one, the next generation of smart cities. Or we have also these examples that we've been seeing around the world. We have the smart cities in China, for example, and I would like to bring here a curious example. I don't know if you recognize this one, but in 2012, the vice mayor of Wuhan, yes, that's exactly that city that's in the center of the epidemic and the problem of the COVID-19. But the vice mayor in 2012 said in the Expo World Congress in Barcelona, that in Spain, that they were aiming to become a leading city in terms of applying technology to improve the lives of its citizens by 2020. Wow. And this was said in 2012. And in 2020, the city would be already finishing the process to become one of the exemplar smart cities in China. Well, I guess it worked, but wait, we cannot just censor this city because they have a purpose. Actually, Wuhan is one of the smartest cities in the world. If not, you can pay attention to it has developed economy. It has 82 colleges and universities, which is the second largest number of colleges and universities in China. And therefore, Wuhan is a center for new economy, new technology, and cultural exchange in central China, along with other cities like Chengdu, for example. It's also regarded as being a smart city with the most investment value. So Wuhan has fully tapped the potential of big data to build 71 application systems, including urban management, medical care, pensions, education, community services, and traffic, which provide convenience for the citizens and allow for better management of the city. Yes, this is amazing, but it's in China. In Toronto, Canada, for example, it's one of the most featured projects in the media for the last 3-4 years and has been cancelled. The Alphabet Google Smart City vision won't become a reality. Sidewalk Labs, Alphabet Smart City subsidiary, is walking away from this ambitious plan to transform Toronto's waterfront into a high-tech utopia. The plan, which was projected to cost over $1 billion and has been developed for the last 2 years, has run into community opposition from local residents, and they think it's too much high-tech and too much sensor leaded, and it's a vision they don't want to share. So this is the proof that we can't have a smart city definition anymore. It's not about technology anymore. I think it's never been about technology. It's a philosophy. It's something that each city needs to evaluate whether it invests in technology or social empowerment, or mix both, or doesn't invest in technology at all. But we are observing around the world is that the ones that invest in technology in charge sometimes choose one of the hard path. And then one must think how smart can it be to invest millions of dollars of public budgets in something that doesn't solve or help the citizens. This is the actual clash between sensibilities that are driven by industry and by social pulse. This is example of Brazil. It has one of the most advanced command centers in the Rio de Janeiro, and then also has the slums, very poor neighborhoods, and full of complications, social complications that no one seems to have the solution to solve. We have a lot of solutions to tackle the COVID-19 problems. We solved it. A lot of problems that came to us with this new reality, and we still face this reality every day, and we are not able to solve it. So this is the ideology clash that the world is crossing and experiencing in a hard way. Cities are the ecosystem, and around the world they are sensible for different priorities according to their own citizens, majorities, or interests. Liberal cities have other priorities rather than conservative, and this ideology pulse will be stopping any hope for development because the clash will be permanent. It's something that we need to put in our heads. We cannot continue in this mode, even though the COVID-19, we are feeling now that things are not under control anymore. But there was a time, very recently actually, where it was possible to discuss, debate, and find a common ground. The smart city movement brought the opportunity to dialogue between industry, activists, governments, and investors to sit around the same table, and we need to recover this very fast. We must find or create the right ecosystem where ideas are not owned, creativeness is fed, tolerance and openness are strong pillars. And with this peaceful atmosphere, we will have the tools to change procurement. We need definitely to change and destroy heavy bureaucracy and nonsense regulations and focus on the real intelligence to build a new world for our future generations. A new world fairer and more tolerant rather than radical or divisional. It's a totally alternative path with just one interest and pulse: ethics, value, transparency, and common public good. You may be asking, okay, well, this sounds like an even bigger utopia than the smart city itself, than the smart city from Google in Toronto. But utopia and dystopia, we really need to start building something new. So that's why in 2018, myself and a group of experts, including Vladimir Batayev, one we heard a few minutes ago, global experts, scientific, academic, renowned personalities with high creatives, anthropologists, communication professionals, journalists, and managers, among others, we created the Zoom Global Smart City Association. This is a new era. At least we believe that we are going to contribute to create a new cornerstone in the new smart cities generation that we need to build. So basically, this supported on fighting what brings the collective harmony down, like egocentrism, materialism, indifference, superficial concepts and ideals, everything that tears our society apart, and focus more on empathy and the compassion in the values, human values, like we saw in the previous slide, and probably can say it also, probably support ourselves, support our society in something so old-fashioned like love, for example. It's a world with the best cities. But in the meantime, we need to continue building bridges. This is a delicate moment, as I mentioned already. Extremism and radical ideology can't be used to build nothing, only to destroy. So everyone will understand this according with their own realities. I'm Portuguese. I'm based in Lisbon, in Portugal, but right now I'm temporarily moved to Athens, Greece. And the reality in Greece is not the same reality in Portugal. As I believe, the reality in Muscat is not the same reality in Paris. And the New York reality is definitely not the same reality in Beijing. So each one of us has his own vision of the reality that experiences itself. So it will never be possible to impose one reality to other people based on our perception of this reality. So that's why we need to build bridges. And especially in this global pandemic moment, I'm using post COVID-19 also, fortunately, I'm the one who thinks I'm optimism about this pandemic moments. We experience a lot of hard times in our human history. So this one is another one. And I would say something about um, worries and opportunities. We need to move forward, or probably some cases and some examples. We need to step back. In some cases, it's better to step back. In other, we definitely need to jump forward. These are some of the worries or opportunities that we can take in consideration. I'm not going too deep in these subjects of security and privacy. A lot of other speakers already touched these points, and this is something included in the clash that I mentioned. It's a cultural and ideological asset, and we have to analyze it in the context. In China, facial recognition is something connected with artificial intelligence. It's totally open and accepted by population, citizens, companies, and governments. But in Europe, it's not so easy to include this, although we use it also. Basically, something cultural and ideological and also political. So we need to refrain our thoughts a little bit for these kind of topics. But I will focus a little bit about economy, smaller cities, tourism, and somehow all related. This may be the chance to improve and balance the geographical distribution of the investments and balance the demographic movements as long as there's a strategy, of course. So leadership, like Jonathan as well referred, in courage. There are no leaders in this world without courage, and some measures need to be taken. They need a lot of courage to be taken. Defunding healthcare in remote or smaller cities cannot continue. This is something we are observing in our countries here in Europe. A lot of defunding and disinvestment in these smaller cities because they don't have the population, they don't have enough power, enough elective power. So they become obsolete and they are ignored by governments. So central governments, along with the city administrations, they need to invert and create the conditions to attract and keep citizens and fight brain drain, at the same time. This will generate a more sustainable development, creating new opportunities and diverting investors to something that often is not in the radar. Why I'm putting the word investment all the time. That's why I choose this topic for my speaking, my keynote, is that someone has to build the cities, and we cannot rely on public budgets to do this. It's impossible for a city to get enough money to go deeply in a smart city project. So the private sector will have a bigger role, an important role for the future of our cities, building with regulation, with transparency, with a good procurement to a new proposal of smart cities. So the private investors need to become the main builders of the smart cities and not only rely on the public budgets, because that's something that won't work. We are watching these conversations over and over. Cities are always going to conference events, showrooms, check all the latest gadgets for their cities, but then they stop in the budget because it's impossible to go forward without the private investment and without development, economically development of the cities. So this is the right time to make things right. Let's build together, and thank you.
Thank you, Viter, for your great session. It is really interesting how you have identified the actual smart city instead of it's only technology, but it's more like the best practices and more like common sense. Thank you very much, and we look forward to have you again in the panel discussion. Thank you very much. Dear all, we have presented today 7 sessions rich with key information. With key information identifying challenges, solutions, innovation, ideas, numerous efforts, and opportunities for smart cities resulting from the pandemic of the COVID-19 outcome, highlighting successful models of smart cities around the world and determining the reasons for their success. We shall now start the second panel discussion of our symposium to be moderated again by Dr. Ali Shidani and inviting our speakers, our guest speakers. Dr. Ali Shidani, you have 20 minutes and you have the time to discuss with your valued guests.
Thank you, Azhar. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me clearly. Is my voice okay? Okay. So I think interesting session and quite unique presentations from Vladimir, Yusuf, Saeed, and Pereira. So Vladimir, you've touched on technology innovation and deep tech solutions. And you coming from a finance background and maybe a venture capital background, do you see the time now is right for investments in deep tech solutions? And what do you see post-COVID? What do you see the technologies that will prevail and the industries that will be more prominent moving forward?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I certainly think now is a good time to invest into deep tech solutions. But to be honest, I think it has always been the good time to do that. And now it's even more important to do that. And maybe to clarify, by deep tech, we mean the technologies, the solutions which are rooted in fundamental science. There is a substantial innovation with a big degree of complexity. That's one important element. And the second important element is that a lot of deep tech companies, especially the ones that we are working with, they are focused on addressing a certain important societal challenge. And that challenge can be the improvement of air quality in the city. It can be the search of a new type of antibiotic. It can be completely different. But the thing is that we have quite a lot of such challenges ahead, and we definitely need these solutions to come from the academia, spun off from academia or from other places to address them. In terms of what is interesting and what is the most promising and important in the coming years, I've hinted at that in my presentation, and this is of course everything related to the mitigation of the climate emergency and further sustainability improvements. And if you look at what is happening on the governmental level in the United States, also in the European Union, there are the Green Deal documents adopted even on the intragovernmental level, and a lot of support is targeted at these Green Deal solutions. And again, they range from sustainable mobility to rethinking the complete value chains in food supply and similar industries. So there are a lot of interesting, difficult problems that are not solved there. And I'm only encouraging and hoping more and more companies, and especially younger people who are dealing with such technology, will pay attention to these challenges and address their effort towards them.
Thank you, Vladimir. So on the topic of deep tech, just a follow-up question. Do you see any inequality, if I may say, between countries who are technologically and scientifically developed compared to countries that are still in their early, maturity stage in technology and scientific development? if the focus now is on deep technology, aren't we widening this gap and technology know-how between these two worlds?
It's a tricky question, and there's, I think, no simple answer. On the one hand, I would say probably yes, and that is driven by the academia and the ranking of universities first, because a lot of interesting companies have come from major universities, and the majority of them is in Europe, in the States, in some places in Southeast Asia, like Singapore. These universities are usually responsible for a lot of such innovation. However, having said that, if I look at the profile of a typical company, I see a lot of national diversity over that. Founders coming from absolutely everywhere. One interesting company that just jumps to my head is a very promising Swedish company dealing with novel type of proteins that we're working with. The founder is an Indian gentleman who has founded a company in Sweden after completing a PhD over there. And one of the important markets for his work is India. So it is much more intertwined than this. And finally, what we also see, and I think that is quite interesting, is the reduction of importance of the Silicon Valley. It used to be Silicon Valley alone being responsible for a lot of innovation. It is no longer the case for sure. There are similar, maybe not equivalent, but promising and aspiring clusters of high-tech innovation, deep tech innovation, sprawling all over the world. In China, in Singapore, in Thailand, there are lots of options over there. So long term, I hope it will become much more equalized, but I think there are now a lot of opportunities to start such companies in different places. So it's not as problematic as we might think at the first attempt.
Thank you, Vladimir. Moving to Engineer Yusuf Al-Harthi, the CEO of Oman Technology Fund. I think Oman Technology Fund have played a pivotal role in funding innovations in the country. And we've seen that investments is accelerating during COVID, during the COVID period. So can you give us, Mr. Yusuf, your view on investments in solutions that are maybe temporary in need, solutions that you will need for a temporary amount of time because of certain circumstances. Do venture capitals also invest in such technologies? Is it a good practice to do that?
Thank you, Dr. Ali. When we launched the initiative, one of the prime criteria was the sustainability of the solutions post-COVID. So it was very important for us when we selected those startups is to select those startups who have potential to sustain. So it would not have been viable just to fund something for temporary purposes. Maybe government organizations could have done that. But for VC, I mean, they look for sustainability and growth.
The other question that comes to me, looking at the data that you showed in investments that you have done, there is focus on founders who are younger in age. How about founders who are retirees, those who are older in age and who might be wiser as well? Do you see an uptick in the number of founders who are older in age as opposed to fresh graduates and students?
Wiser is a relative term. You could be older but not wise, still keep doing the same mistakes again. We all do that. So anyway, you know, our data show that the most successful founders are those who are above 35. And the reason being is that they have knowledge of the potential of their verticals, and they have also established network inside potential clients that could help them to get in. Plus, they have the work ethics and this. The only challenge with, like, probably Gulf countries will face with this kind of making this something that we can build on is the reluctance of people to leave their jobs. So we have been successful on helping them to get them sabbatical leave, but still it is not the same. They have a safety net they can fall into. So I think that will remain a challenge because they have to be desperate enough to want to succeed. Younger entrepreneurs will give you mileage in terms of they can spend the numbers of hours that you and I cannot spend anymore. And older ones will give you the knowledge of the domain and the connection, and some of them will give even, they have some capital there because they have built themselves by then. So the truth is somewhere in between. Okay, so I agree with you. Older entrepreneurs are more likely to succeed, and younger one, mixed group would be probably a good mix.
Thank you, Bashmandas. Moving on to Mohandas Saeed. So you've shown some of the technologies of focus during COVID, and these are some of the ideas generated by innovators and entrepreneurs here in Oman. What do we need to do? Or let's say, what is Oman ICT Group doing to ensure that the influx of ideas is not stopping, will not stop after COVID? What do we need to do to make sure that these ideas will keep coming and the enthusiasm of innovation and coming up with the next big idea will still continue after COVID?
Thank you, Doctor. It's a very good question. And I think it's not the idea creation was only the required for the fourth industrial revolution to sustain. It's actually the four elements which I've mentioned. We had lots of struggle to convince the business owners to transfer. We have got lots of struggle as well on getting the same acceleration on the regulation and the policies to be implemented with an agile effect, adopting themselves with the new technologies. And the fourth is the adoption of that from the market and the volume of this. The pandemic is actually have touched the four elements, whether it is the regulation and the policies, the business needs, the excitement of the youth and the entrepreneurs to invest on these technologies, and the business as well requirements, or the business decision makers have made it it was clear for them that it is required, and they should have looked at the other angles as not only the financial return part. So you have asked in the last panel, Dr. Salim, is this going to continue after the pandemic? I would say it's not with the same speed. Definitely no, because the crisis always has its own speed, because they compromise on so many things versus the decision. But at least it will be faster than before, and at least it's been demonstrating that this technology have proven themselves, and it has a market. It's only a matter of how fast we want it to be implemented, so that we can prepare ourselves for any future pandemic. And I think this pandemic was the impact of it was really major. For any business owner would always put it part of his risk matrix whenever there is a risk evaluation for any business. So that would made it at least within a priority list where it was not mentioned at all. I've shown in one of the slides that the business continuity and the requirements of the business efficiency utilizing the technology was not there. Actually, it's mostly used to reduce the cost or to make or to attract more revenue. Now the technology is used, is just to used for a much better utilization, and I think it's going to be adopted in a better way. Now, how are we going to carry out from the group perspective? I think most of our investment is going to be focused initially as part of our strategy before the pandemic was on the fourth industrial revolution. But we have done a time frame to accelerate that. We expected in 3 years to start investing or putting our first investments on the first industrial revolution. So the first 2 years is just to set the ground and do an education and a business awareness for the fourth industrial revolution technologies. I think we have to revise our strategy and maybe to put in our priorities to start implementing this fourth industrial revolution and heavily invest on this on it post COVID-19.
Shukran, Bashmandis. And being in the committee that evaluates ideas, I know I asked Dr. Salem this question, but I want to hear from you as well. You are getting so many ideas in the National Committee. Some of the ideas are approved, some of them are not. What is your practical advice to anyone listening today if he or she wants to submit an idea, pandemic-related idea, to the National Committee? What are the success criteria for any idea to be approved by the National Committee?
Thank you again, Dr. Ali, for asking this question specifically, because I just want to clarify that the rejected ideas to the committee is not, let's say, an assessment if this idea is good or not. It's all to be, does it fit the requirement now or not? There is so many very excellent ideas being rejected, not because they are not good, but they don't fit the situation right now. The situation is mostly the urgency and the application. What is how it can solve the applications. So my advice is that to anybody who has an idea to submit, and if it's not accepted, to approach us again as a group, or Oman Investment or Oman Technology Fund as well is looking at lots of ideas on this. And we talk about how to implement these ideas for another applications. There's so many other sectors which are not touched in this committee, like Dr. Ali, you working in the logistics, there's aviation, there are oil and gas. Still, there's so many. Most of the ideas which we are looking at now is in the medicine and health. So, or in the it helps the commercial part, or the let's say the business retail part. So, but these are not the only sectors which we are looking at. Lots of ideas on some other sectors have been rejected because they don't fit the application right now. So that's very important to clarify. Rejected ideas are not bad ideas. They just don't fit the situation right now. But I think we would be looking at most of those later on once we pass through the COVID-19.
Thank you for that clarification, Saeed. So moving to Pereira, you've presented a different view of what a smart city is. Whenever you hear about a smart city talk, the talk is mostly about the technologies in smart cities, whether it's IoT, AI, and so on. But the way, if I understood your presentation, the way you look at smart cities is from a human aspect. You're putting human first before technologies. Do you find it difficult to to sell your idea when you speak about humanity while using the terminology smart city? Because smart and city, these two words together, they represent physical things, physical beings, devices, machines, bricks and mortars, equipments. They represent something physical, but the way you have approached this is more humanitarian and more human and emotional. So do you find it difficult to sell your idea around?
Ali, thank you for your question. Actually, I am a technology addict. I use technology, and I don't promote only the human part of the smart city, of course. But there's a but. Technology is inevitable. It will flood all the cities around the world, all the communities. Everything will be will have a chance to get that technology someday or other day. So it's inevitable that things happen this way. So what we need to make sure is that we don't lose something in the process. Because, for example, I give you a basically example. I call the quantum mayor. So we put the best of the edge computing, doing artificial intelligence, doing computing, a lot of algorithms, and running our city. Why we need mayors anymore? We don't need mayors because we have the perfect machine running our cities. So what is the function of a mayor? You just take decisions by what the machine tells him to do, data tells him to do, or he has to have responsibilities. He has to have empathy. He has to have feelings for what is their condition about going to one way or choosing the other way. So this will make the difference because we cannot skip this part. There will be always someone in charge, and we cannot hide in the technology to make sure our decisions are not taken on responsibility. So when we understand this, politicians, government, and even companies, they will feel they are changing also because the smart city didn't work for the technology approach, for the industry approach, didn't work at all. We've been discussing this for a long time. I discussed this with Vladimir the other day. So there's an industry, a whole industry that was relying on invading our cities with sensors, IoT applications, whatever. But it was not what the citizens need. And actually, give you another example, citizens, they can make their own technology and solve their own problems. That's where, when innovation happens, is when there's a problem to solve and no one solves it. That's when people get smart. That's when people find the tools, the right tools, the smartest tools, even these low budget tools to overpass these challenges. So I think we missed something in all this process. I think, but we're still on time. I think COVID showed us a lot of new paths to walk, and cities all around the world, like I mentioned in my presentation. It doesn't matter if it's in America, if it's in Asia, if it's in Arabia. Cities need to focus on their own challenges and try to find local resources, governmental agencies, attract new talent, attract new investments, and solve those problems, those challenges. They cannot just go to the supermarket and buy all the technology they think they need, but actually they don't need.
So is it accurate to say that your approach of smart city is a bottom-up approach? It starts with needs. It starts with the challenges. It doesn't have to be imposed top-down. It's a bottom-up approach using cheap, available resources to solve city problems. Is this statement accurate?
Yes, Ali, it's almost accurate because I am in the middle. I don't see a city thrive only with a bottom-up approach. Otherwise, things won't work. And I don't see either, and I see it unbalanced if it's only a top-down approach. So it has to be in the middle, some balanced solution. Because why is this? Because the city cannot build by paying all the expenses of what they need, and they need to put something from the citizen side, and they need to bring also startups and companies to invest in their cities, and each one has to keep the balance. Because but if they don't have the opening, if they don't have the ecosystem to thrive, it will fail. So that's why Silicon Valley thrived in one day, and we can imagine how hard it was. Because people think that the companies there started immediately with a huge success. Actually, no, they have a lot of failures in the process. They fail a lot. People now regret to sell stocks from Amazon or Apple, because now it will be millionaire. But at that time, no one believed them. And this is what it makes interesting for the cities, is that they need to have someone in charge that believes they're champions, their own people, innovators and disruptive. And most of the times, these people have a lot of ideas, crazy ideas. And if they don't, if no one listens to them, they probably go to other place and will start thriving and creating in their other place. This is what a mixed approach for the bottom up and the top down approach. It has to be a balanced solution.
Thank you, Pereira. And also, I want to thank all the speakers, Yusuf, Saeed, and Vladimir. Thank you very much. I think we consumed our time for the panel discussion. Thank you very much. And I want to thank the organizers as well. And Azhar, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. We have received, actually myself, I have received multiple comments from everyone who's watching the session with us and the symposium, and they are thanking everyone, and they are very glad with the questions and discussions that we are addressing today. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Mr. Vladimir Batev, Yusuf Al-Harthi, Saeed Al-Mandari, and Vitor Pereira. It's our pleasure having your wisdom thoughts shared with us today. Our extended appreciation also goes to Dr. Ali, who had magnificently managed the two panel discussions for today. We greatly appreciate having you, and all our 7 speakers for today.